Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video today, let me calm down, let me not go that snappy, but today I'm going to talk about my best books of 2022. Yeah. It's finally that time to talk about it. Yeah, it's very self-explanatory, to be honest, although I do want to say there's not 10 books here. There's 11, I think. I haven't really counted again, but from the last time I looked, I think there was 11. And yeah, it's because I was thinking, do I really want to cut one of these off the list? No, I don't. So I'm going to talk about 11, and I haven't ranked them in order of like best to worst or worst to best, because again, that was too much pressure for me. But instead, I've like kind of ranked them by genre, so they're like grouped together by genre, because I think it'll be kind of interesting to see what genres like dominate or make a debut, or you get what I'm trying to say, even though words are hard. I'm gonna start off with the middle grade. My best book of the year in terms of middle grade, I guess, was Bridge of Souls. So this is the last book in the Cassidy Blake series, and I'm upset. Like, I'm actually mad. Like, every so often I'll think back to the fact that I finished this series and I'll get mad, because I loved this series that much. It was so good. It was so good. I mean, I gave you a 5 stars, but truthfully, the whole series, this was more, a series was a 6-star read. Like, it was just amazing. So if you don't know what this series is about, it's basically about this young girl who she can see ghosts. No one can see ghosts, but she can see ghosts. And her parents, they are these TV personality ghost people. So I think her mum really believes in ghosts, whereas her dad is more of a skeptic, but he still like enjoys like going to like all these places, finding the history behind it, the facts and stuff like that. So he still really does enjoy all of this paranormal stuff. At the same time, neither of them see ghosts, but their daughter Cassidy Blake does, and it's just about her adventures, and it's so fun. So it's set in a different city every time. So one's set in Paris, one's set in Edinburgh, and one is set in New Orleans. And the sense of place when I was reading them was so strong. Like, it literally felt like the streets of Paris. It felt like I was in New Orleans. Like, it was so, I loved that the place was another character. Oh, it was amazing. Another thing was that I need to stop gushing. I need to just use my words. But as well as that, it was creepy. Like, this was about ghosts, and I was on edge. I was like, oh my god, no. Am I a wimp? Yes, I am a certified wimp. I will say it. I'll say it again, I'm a wimp. But I still found myself like, oh my god, it was thrilling. It was, oh, did I say it was meant to be thrilling? It was meant to be thrilling. And it was thrilling. For me, someone who's 20 years old, I was reading this middle grade, and I was like, oh my god. I was like, am I going to get scared? Am I going to get nightmares from this? I mean, I didn't, but it was so good. And I love this series, and I'm actually mad. I'm mad that there's not another one. I feel like this easily could be an ongoing series where every so often Cassidy Blake goes to a new town, new city, new country, new something. I mean, at least more than 3. There's more spooky places than those 3 places. But anyway, this isn't a letter to the author telling her she needs to write more series. But at the same time, if she ever finds this, babe, the fans are loving it. The fans are loving it. The fans want more. And I'm a fan. I am a strong fan of this book. I'm a stan. I hate myself. I actually hate myself. But I do love this book. Talk about thrillers. Let's just go into my adult thriller. I only have one again, which is There's Someone Inside Your House. Oh, I said adult. It's not even adult. It's a YA. It's a YA thriller. And again, I was eating it up. Okay, I was eating it up. Oh my god. So if you don't know, I read this during Summerween this year, and that was like basically my first proper videos in Booktube, and I absolutely love this. I absolutely love this. I was up reading it. It got me. So basically what this is about, the premise of this is that there's this new girl into this small American town. It's always a small American town, isn't it, with these slashes? Anyway, she goes to a small American town, and she's got a past. She's got a past. We don't know what that past is. She's like, I'm mysterious. She's one of them, right? And yeah, you know, she's there with her grandma, and then people just start dying. Kids start dying, and then it goes from there. And it was thrilling. I was loving it. It was keeping me going. Like, the thrillerness, I was interested. I was like, who's the killer? But also just the anticipation, like I don't know what the word is, but you know what I mean. I was just like, oh my god. Right, for the thriller. Also the romance. I was loving it. It felt believable in terms of the characters, but I was saying the romance, the way they communicated with each other, I was like, oh my god, grown adults can't communicate as well as these guys are communicating. I think it was just propulsive. That's the word I'll use. I think it was just propulsive. Like, it was just addictive. I couldn't put it down. I read it as soon as I started it. I basically finished it because I couldn't leave this book, which is an amazing thing for a thriller /slasher /horror to do. It was YA, so again, because hi, my name's Kimmy, I'm a wimp, I think that helps it out. Like, I can't deal with horrors full of slashers based at my age, otherwise I will cry. So yeah, this was perfect for me, and that's why it was one of my best books of the year. It was so good. It was so good that I watched the movie afterwards. Still wasn't finished. I listened to podcasts of Stephanie Perkins talking about this book. I listened to like 3 different podcast episodes of Stephanie Perkins after reading this book, and that is when I know that I really enjoyed the book. For romance, since I'm talking a lot about romance, my favourite book was The Ark. Now, I read this right at the beginning of the year, and I'm upset. I'm upset that I hadn't started my channel then, because then I would have been able to push this onto you. I would have been able to aggressively shove this into you lot's faces some more. But you guys, I don't even think you've heard me talk about The Ark. The Ark was amazing. The premise of The Ark is that it follows this guy and this girl, and they are both unlucky in love, shall we say. And there's this dating agency called The Ark, and it's kind of secretive, kind of mysterious, but all you know is that the women have to pay £45,000 and the men have to pay £50,000, and then they go there for a week, and it's like, we're gonna find you a match who matches you holistically, as in, so we're talking about sexually compatible, emotionally compatible, financially compatible, all of those things, right? And they're there for a week. You're isolated, so you can't have your phone. They're just monitoring you the entire time for a week, and it's like a retreat basically. And then after that, they're like, okay, we found you a match, and it's the story of this couple coming together after they've both entered into the Ark. And it kind of is a bit sci-fi-y, as I said, because of this Ark dating agency. It feels a bit like The One by John Mars in terms of the way the romance is constructed, but I loved this book so much. I think it was that sci-fi element that made it so different. Like, it was more than just a regular romance, and as I was reading it, I was thinking, how is this gonna end? It was a romance for me that actually made me feel a bit like, what? Because I know we go to romance for like the same thing, in and out, but this blew my socks off, because I was a little bit like, hold on, no, there is actually a bit of a twist here and I don't know what's gonna happen. I loved it so heavily, and it just expanded my brain into what I think I want from my romances. It was so bad, like, kind of like put me off like regular rom-coms a bit. I'm a bit like, it's this again. Like, I needed to push out the boat a bit more because I've had this book now. I think so many people would enjoy it. I think it's such a good book to recommend to people who like things like The One by John Mars, and they say, oh, I'm trying to get into romance. I feel like this would be a good romance for them to read. I feel like it's not a genre blend, but it almost kind of is. And so it's just amazing. And again, I feel like I haven't heard enough people talking about it, so that makes me upset. On to another kind of like genre blendy book. I've shoved under fantasy, but romance is a big part of this book. And I would also say it's kind of sci-fi-y. And that's Blood Like Magic. Now, I absolutely love this book. We can blame / thank Christina's chapters for this, because I simply read it because she had a vlog where she had acquired the second book in the series, and I immediately paused the video and never went back and watched it. I'm really sorry. I'm so sorry, because I started this book and I absolutely went straight through it. I ran through it. Listen, it was amazing. It was absolutely... Now, I was doing like a 24-hour reading something, but when I tell you the pace in which I read this book, the enjoyment from which I read this book, I gave it 4 stars, but on reflection, I just can't stop thinking about it. Sorry, guys, if the angle's changed. My sister was calling me. But anyway, as I was saying, Blood Like Magic. It was amazing. Did I tell you what it was about? Basically, it's about this woman. It's set in the future, which is why it's a bit sci-fi-y. It's set in the future, and it follows this family of witches. And when they get to a certain age, in order to get their magic, is that right? I think so. or in order to keep their magic, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, I think it's in order to get her magic, because she doesn't really have magic like that. Or she does. Then they get visited by one of their ancestors who sets them a task. They have to complete the task in order to unlock their magic. Our main character, it's her time. But when she gets visited by one of her ancestors like, what, you think life is easy? You think life is easy? Let me show you about life. Let me tell you about life. And she sets her a really hard task. And so, yeah. I don't really want to say much more, because I know, actually, if you look up the synopsis on Goodreads, it'll tell you more than that. But what I will say is that there's a romance. There's a romance. Boy, is there a romance. I enjoyed the romance. I loved the romance. But also, I loved the family element. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I loved all of the different conversations that I was having. It was just so just slick. Like, so many different conversations. And it wasn't even deep. It was just like, she would just mention something. She would just talk about, like, I don't know, she'll just talk about, for example, being trans, right, in the future, in this world, right? And just how this technology is interplaying with that. And then that was such a interesting thing. And like, there was conversations about slavery, which was really hard to read. I would say trigger warnings for that, because I was triggered. It was a lot. There were conversations about, I can't even think right now, but just so many things. Like, and I loved how it was witchy, but it took place like in the future with technology and stuff, because I feel like a lot of times there's a temptation to go into the past when talking about witchcraft. But this one was like, no, we're going to the future. And why did nobody tell me that the author was on Booktube? No one told me until I'd read it and I was chatting about it like an idiot. Like, I didn't even know what I was talking about. And then someone was like, oh yeah, Lizelle Sambury, is that her name? She's on Booktube. And I'm like, nobody told me. So, but now I'm like, I don't know if I want to follow her, even though I love Booktube. I'm a bit like, I'm scared, because I love your books and I want to be a bit separated. I loved your book for your book without knowing you. So now, if I fall in love with you, do you know what I mean? That so far I've had a separation between author and book. I want to keep it that way. Because I absolutely love this book so much. As I said, I gave it 4 stars at the time, but on reflection, 5 stars. 5 stars. Well, in fact, I wouldn't even change the rating. I would keep it as 4 stars, but I would still say it's one of the best books because it's had a long-lasting impact on me. My one non-fiction best book of the year was Being Seen, hands down. I mean, I read a lot of good non-fiction. I will point you towards my ode to non-fiction video, because I kind of tier ranked all of the non-fictions that I've read. I hadn't really read much non-fiction since then, so that's pretty much me tier ranking most of the non-fiction that I read this year. But my favorite one, hands down, is Being Seen. So this is a book on being deafblind. It's one woman's perspective. She's deafblind, and it's like her one woman's fight to end ableism, and she talks about deafblindness and in lots of different facets, but it's also quite a personal story as well. And it made me check my internalized ableism in certain ways, but more than that, it made me have a thirst for knowledge on more things like this, because I was like, this is only one area, but it made me want to be like, okay, well, I just need to educate myself about lots of things in general. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't necessarily just about the deaf blindness that it awakened me to. It was like, okay, so I've read this book about deaf blindness, but that's not it. That's not where the journey ends. This is one woman's opinion, one woman's story. You know, is there more perspectives that I need to read from? I need to do that. Other disabilities and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And that is one thing that I will always love this book for. And also, it made me think about encounters that I had in real life, and what is the right thing to do. And you can never know, unless you kind of like take time to know, if that makes sense. But outside of that, it was just a great book. It was just a great book for the actual content of the book. And so, again, this is a book that I will try and push on people, because, again, I just found it and I just picked it up and I just read it and it was really good and I really loved it. And the author, she is a writer, so the way it was written was so easy to digest. Like, it wasn't academic in any way. It wasn't hard to read or hard to listen to at all. It was very good. So it is a book that I would recommend lots of people read, to be honest with you. So after that, now we're getting into my top genres, I guess. Well, they're all even. The rest of the genres have 2 books each, so we might as well just start at contemporary, shall we? Should we start at contemporary? And we have Black Girls Must Be Magic. I love this book. I absolutely loved it. I find it hard to describe because I don't know, I feel like a lot of times people want plot, and I feel like the plot is just everyday life. Do you know what I mean? That is the plot, and so I find it very hard. It's just everyday life of a black girl living, and it's amazing. So it follows this woman, and she's in a relationship, and she goes to work, and she has friends, and she has family, and it's just looking at her interacting with all of those things and how those relationship changes, everything. It very much feels like, okay, you're just following this woman and her life at this particular point and all of the things that she comes up against, and I absolutely love it for that. It's amazing. Obviously the title is called Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, and it does sound a bit like trickery, but I wouldn't say that it is. It's just like, it's talking about like the daily struggles of a black woman that just leave you friggin' exhausted, which is what I loved, and I love it so much. Like, even the title is just perfect. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that sometimes, maybe, I don't know, maybe you might think that, oh, okay, you know, you have to encounter some huge racist incident and then that is like would leave you feeling exhausted. Sometimes it's just the daily microaggressions that you have to deal with that really just make you feel like I'm fucking exhausted. Okay, so I absolutely love it. It was amazing. It was just amazing. And it's a trilogy. I read the first one, loved it. Read the second one, loved it. And now we're waiting for the third one. Okay, so what am I going to do when the third one comes out? I don't know. Start from the beginning and reread them all, because it's a series that I feel like it doesn't matter what point in my life I read it, I will always love it. That's how strongly I feel about this book. It's like a series for life. The next contemporary is, I read it during my Reading Like Me Black British edition. It's People Person. Can words describe how I felt about this book? So it follows these 5 kids, well, they're adults. It follows these 5 adults who are all half siblings. 2 of them are full siblings, but the rest of them are half siblings. It's in 5 kids all share one dad, 4 baby mamas. Okay, that's the vibe. And at the beginning of the book, they don't really talk. They've met each other about they can count the amount of times they've interacted on one hand, but at the beginning of the book, something happens with one of the siblings, and she rings up her sister, and they all turn up, and the story goes from there. I love it. I absolutely love it. I read it for Black Britathon, right? And I think it's a great book because it was set in South London, and so me being from South London, I felt like so many things that I could relate to just in the setting, just in that. And even in the way the people were speaking, like the things they were coming across, and these people, you know, it felt very familiar to me, and I loved it for that. It was amazing. But the actual story was so good. Like, the actual story kind of reminds me of Dial A for Aunties in a way, but not in the same way. I don't want to spoil which ways it's similar, but the actual plot is kind of like Dial A for Aunties, but more of a contemporary everyday version, as opposed to the manic mayhem of Dial A for Aunties. And then the characters were just amazing. Like, it is very much, I would say, a character driven book. Well, it's kind of like, the plot is there, the plot is definitely there, don't get me wrong, but the characters, you will fall in love with these characters, and everyone is human. That is what it is. Every single character is human. They are flawed, but also they are so beautiful. They have such good quality to them as well, including the dad. The dad, I would say, is a big character. Obviously, he is what links all 5 of them. You know, you meet their mums, you meet their partners. Oh, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And I don't know if I've seen that many people read it on Booktube. I mean, I've kind of seen it buzzing around in London and in certain things that I've seen certain people talking about it and stuff, but I don't feel like I've seen enough people actually reading it and saying how much they loved it. And so this is my space. This is where I get on my soapbox and say I loved it. It was absolutely amazing. Now, I struggle to talk about books that I love, I feel like, because I don't know, I don't want to spoil things, and I just feel emotion, so it's hard when I feel such strong emotions. It's hard for me to translate them into words without sitting down and like typing out what I want to say, and I don't want to do that. I want this to be off the cuff. So yeah, just know that I absolutely love People Person. It was amazing. onto historicals, because contemporary is historicals. Lovely War. I've spoken about Lovely War before, but I really enjoyed it. This is a historical, but it's a kind of two-way historicals, because where it's set in World War One, and it's basically as if the Greek gods and goddesses were still existed and we're in World War One, and it's following the myth of Aphrodite and Hephaestus, which is they're married, but Aphrodite cheats on him with the god of war, and so in order to like catch them or get his revenge, he traps him in a golden cage and he takes them to Zeus. I think that's the traditional myth, right? He takes them to Zeus to punish them. I'm not sure what happens when he takes them to Zeus in the original myth, but in this book they're in a hotel room and he catches them, and she's like, hold on a minute, before you take us to get punished, let me tell you the story of why love and war are always linked, why it's not necessarily my fault that I'm having this affair with the god of war, because love and war, they are intact, they are interwoven, they are linked together. And then she tells the story of these people during the First World War. It follows these women who sign up to join the army as nurses, and it follows a man in the army. It follows a black musician who's in the army in the black division. I want to say World War One. Maybe it's World War Two. Maybe it's World War Two. Anyway, all I know is that it was amazing. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Like the way that it was done was so artfully. I cried. It was that good. But also just it felt like very much like this person is a master of their craft. Like the writing was beautiful. And I know I haven't really spoken about the writing in a lot of these because it's not necessarily something that I run to, but the writing in this was spectacular. The story in both, you just felt compassion. Compassion is the main word that I feel. You felt empathy. Like it really tugged on you in those ways. You couldn't help but feel so much for these characters, almost as if they were real. You know, you can help but sympathize, and like you were wishing the best for them in their love stories, and were really sad for them because obviously it's wartime and things happen in war. I don't know. I won't gush on anymore because I feel like this is meant to be quick and I'm taking long. But my other historical was Lessons in Chemistry. Lessons in Chemistry, this is a very buzzy book, and I'm happy for it because it's amazing. So it follows this woman, Elizabeth Zott, and it kind of just, what can I say about Elizabeth Zott? What can I say? She's a chemist. She loves chemistry. Like, that is her. She bleeds chemistry, and that's all she wants to do. But this is set in, I want to say, the 60s, and so it's unusual for a woman to be a scientist in the way that she wants to be a scientist. And it follows her. It starts off where she's in education. It does. It starts off when she's in education. And then she meets someone, and it's about her and her relationship with this man. And then it moves on from that, and it follows her in her career later on, and the trials and tribulations and successes that she has in her life, and all of the people who are important to her. Follows her. She's got a dog at some point that you fall in love with. All of them. Again, every single character in this you love. Every single character in this you love. And if you don't love them, you hate them. Like, as I said, characters are flawed 100%. But you still feel for them and you still love them. And you just want the best for Elizabeth Zott so much. Like, she is such an inspiring woman that you just want the best for her. It's an amazing book. It's the author's first book, and she smashed it out of the park. She really did, because goddamn, this is a great book. This is a good book. My last but not least genre was mysteries, and I read a lot of mysteries, so I'm kind of shocked that only 2 made it to my top mysteries actually. But to be honest, I could have put more books in my top books of the year, but I narrowed it down. So one of the mysteries is Mistress of the Art of the Dead. Is that right? Mistress of the Art of Death. If you've been around watching my wrap-up specifically, because I haven't really put them in vlogs, you will see me talking about Mistress of the Art of Death series. So this follows, I always find it hard to describe it. This follows a woman who, in modern days, we would call her like a forensic pathologist, as in someone who performs autopsies. But obviously this is set in medieval London in 1215 or something like that. It follows Henry Plantagenet's era. he is a character in this book, so it's more than just his era. And so she originally was from Sicily, where the rules on like females and what they can do was more lax, and so she was trained, she was taught how to dissect people and to find things out, like as you would in an autopsy. But this is unusual. And in the first book, she gets sent to England because they're like, we need someone to help us solve what's going on, because people are dying and we need you to help us. Yeah, it's about this woman, and it's so good. It's so good because not only are you there for the mystery of like what's going on in, I think it's Cambridge in the first book, you want to know what's going on, like what's happening, but more than that, like the stakes of the mystery. So first of all, you're just interested in the mystery because the mystery is interesting. Second of all, the stakes of it is really high because the people of the local town, they're blaming the Jewish people, and so the Jewish people are suffering, so you really are invested in them finding out what is happening in this town because of the injustice that is happening towards the Jewish people in this town. Which I love that conversation though, to be honest with you. I love how that is spoken about, because I don't know, I don't think I've seen anybody else really talking about that in any books. So I loved that. As well as that, which I find a really good thing to mention in the book, is also the character. She is amazing, but she is a woman basically ahead of her time, because she comes to England and everyone in England is like, what? To the point where she has to pretend that she's not the doctor. She's got a friend who he's Arabic, and he has to pretend to be the doctor, and she pretends to be his translator because they wouldn't accept a female doctor at this time. And so that element is there, but then the characters you just love. You love or you hate the characters with a passion, to the point where, the book that I'm reading, because I think I'm on book 3, I had to stop. I couldn't continue. It was too much. Like, something was happening. The plot was plotting so much I can't finish the book. I was reading them basically once a month, and if you notice, I haven't read any in the past couple of months because it was too much. I was getting too tense, and like things were happening to the main character, and I was like, oh my god, I can't cope. And that's how I know I'm reading a good book. That's how I know it's a good series. If you've got me that engaged, if I'm that interested, nah, sign me up. Like, the hell, it's so good. It's so good, and it's unique. I can't think of another mystery series that is the same as this book. It really is. And I will say there's a time jump between each book, which I actually love. When I first read the second one, I was shocked. I wasn't expecting there to be a time jump, but it's good because it means that you have time. You are still learning. Like, when you read a first book, you're learning about things that have happened as well as following what's currently happening. And when there is a time jump, you still have that element. Whereas when you just flow from one book straight into the other, you lose that element of finding out things that have happened. And that was something that you loved in the first book. Yeah, you're following me. So that's why I think it's so good that there's a time jump, because it basically means that I have enjoyed each book equally as much. But yeah. Another book that does that is the next series, and my last book in the best books of 2022 is A Murder of Crows. Loved it. This is a mystery following an ecologist. So what she does is she goes to this manor house, and it has a forest in the back, and she does a survey. So she's just like looking at what animals are there. Are they nesting? I don't know. I don't really know the full ins and outs of what an ecologist does, but like, she's checking the droppings. She's like, oh look, there's that badger there, and this is an endangered species, and checking all of that out. But while she's at this manor house, the woman who owns it, she's murdered. Dun dun dun. And so she's the main suspect. They're like, you were there, you were the last person there, sorry, but you are a suspect. And at first she's a bit like, mysterious girl, but then like, she has to get involved because, well, she doesn't really even want to get involved. Very reluctant, but not too reluctant. It was the perfect way of, for me, I felt like there were some cozy mysteries where slightest provocation, they'll read the newspaper and they're like, yes, I'm getting involved. And I do enjoy those books, but it's not as realistic. Whereas for me, this was more of a realistic way that like, no, I'm not really involved, but you keep harassing me, keep saying I'm guilty, or I feel guilty, and things are coming out of my life. I need to and then I have an idea and I'm like, oh, actually, let me see if I can action that idea to see if that will help them, right? I really liked the way that that was done. And on top of that, it wasn't too much like, oh, I don't want to be here. Why am I doing this? Oh my God. Which I find highly frustrating. I find it highly frustrating. I'm like, can you not be so passive? I realised I don't like passive main characters. So, it was absolutely amazing. The author herself, she's an ecologist, which means there's just knowledge and she knows exactly what she's talking about. I love it, and I love the different career paths. It makes me interested hearing. Every time I read it and there's stuff about ecology, it makes me interested. I like hearing that aspect of it as well. And the romance, oh my God, how can I forget the romance? The romance in this was so good. That book 2, I didn't love book 2 as much, unfortunately, but book 2, tender hooks. I had to talk to my family because, oh my God, the romance was romancing so much in the second one that I was literally like, I don't know. So good. Too good. One could argue too good, right? To the point where it made me just like where it went in the second one, because I was like, I don't know. I just felt like, yeah. Anyway, it was amazing. I love this first book. As I said, second book wasn't as great, but the first book was great, and it was one of my favourite missions of the year. That is one of my favourite books of 2022. As I said, it's not from worst to best. These are just the collection of my best books of 2022. So a lot of them you've probably heard me talk about. Some of them, this is the first time. If so, I'm sorry, but now you know. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye, guys.